Welcome to another episode of Short Story Showdown, where we pit two short stories head to head to see which one comes out on top. This week we have Up in Michigan taking on Blabbermouth in a battle of the shorts. So without further ado, let's get started. Our first short story, Up in Michigan by Ernest Hemingway. This is the first story in the book The Hemingway Stories, which is a collection of short stories by Ernest Hemingway. This book was published in 2021, but the actual story was written in 1923 and is 8 pages long. Quote from Edna O'Brien: "Many women feel that Hemingway hated women and wrote adversely about them. I would ask his detractors, female or male, to read this story. Could you in all honesty say that this was a writer who didn't understand women's emotions and who hated women?" Short story number 1, Up in Michigan. Jim Gilmore came to Horton's Bay from Canada and bought the blacksmith shop from Old Man Horton. Jim is a very good blacksmith, even if he doesn't look the part. Liz Coates, who is a hired servant for the Smiths, has been keeping an eye on Jim. There are many things she likes about Jim, and even though he has noticed that Liz's hair is always neat and he likes her face because it is so jolly, he has never thought about her. So one night, after some celebrations for a profitable hunting trip, Jim and Mr. Smith spend the evening drinking. Liz waits in the kitchen in hopes of catching a glimpse of Jim before he heads home. Well, as the night comes to an end, Jim comes into the kitchen and puts a few moves on Liz. He asks her to follow him out, and she accepts his invitation. Let's just say the story gets a little spicy at this point. So what did I like about Up in Michigan? I like that the story was thankfully only 8 pages long. Now, what didn't quite work for me? Well, that would be all 8 pages of this story. I was not a fan of this story at all. From the weird way this story was written to the quote-unquote love scene, which was borderline rape, where I guess no actually means yes. After this love scene, Jim ends up passing out and Liz goes back to the Smiths' home. If this doesn't say romantic, I'm not sure what does. I did not enjoy this story one bit, and to answer Edna O'Brien's question at the beginning, I would say this story doesn't really help Hemingway's perceived dislike for women. Our second story this week is Blabbermouth by Theodore Sturgeon. This is the first story in the book Killdozer, Volume 3. The complete stories of Theodore Sturgeon, which is a collection of short stories. This book was published in 1994, but the story was actually written in 1947 and is 25 pages long. Short story number 2, Blabbermouth. In this story, Eddie Gretchen, who is on his way to meet Sylvia for a dinner date, accidentally runs into a very beautiful woman. Eddie apologizes and learns that this woman's name is Maria Undergard. Maria, at this point, makes it very clear he is to call her Miss Undergard. Even though she is hesitant at first, she has agreed to sit down with him and get to know each other. Eddie, at this point, has forgotten about his dinner date and spends the evening learning about Maria. We find out that according to Maria, when suspicion and guilt, when the two of them combine, they form a very powerful psychological entity, which ends up possessing her. Eddie blows this off as Maria just making fun, and after only 5 dates, they are married. Well, one night at a party, Eddie finds out that Maria wasn't kidding. When suspicion and guilt come together in a crowd, it ends up possessing Maria, and that is when she isn't able to control herself and let both parties know the dirty little details of their suspicion and guilt. Let's just say things get very messy for Eddie as his wife can't seem to keep her mouth shut around people. Hence the title, Blabbermouth. So what did I like about Blabbermouth? I really enjoyed that this story being 25 pages, it was able to dig a little deeper into our main characters than some of the shorter stories I have previously read. I thought the book started out a bit weird, but that was only because I wasn't understanding the premises of the story. Once I understood what was actually going on, I absolutely loved this story. The idea that when a group of people get together, there is bound to be suspicion and guilt among some of the people. The idea that when this happens, it creates a spirit that can possess a person to confront both parties. It doesn't go well when the secrets are known, but once it is out, the spirit and possession end. This story goes from our couple hitting rock bottom to being able to actually use this to their advantage and rise back up to the top. Excellent little story and highly recommended. Now, what didn't quite work for me? Honestly, I can't think of anything I didn't like about this story. I'm very hopeful the rest of the stories in this collection are just as good. I might have found an author I really enjoy that writes good short stories. So, which story did I like best? I think it is pretty obvious which story is going to win this week. I think the bigger question is, does this story take the overall top spot? Well, that you will have to wait and see, but as far as this head-to-head goes, this week's winner is Blabbermouth by Theodore Sturgeon. Okay, now it's time for the overall favorite reveal. So our current king of the hill is Stroboscope. And this episode's champ Blabbermouth, which one reigns supreme? Current overall champion, Blabbermouth. So as much as I enjoyed the humor aspect of Stroboscope, I found Blabbermouth just as humorous, but with much more depth and just an all-around better written story. Until the next episode, remember, Kevin Toll clearly thinks being a blabbermouth is a personality trait. Unfortunately, it's the only one he's got.